we had two Lee Williams on the Edinburgh campus once upon a time, and the Lee Williams that was here well before I was just that, the elder, and he had left a fairly sizable sum of money, right, to the school. And they kept calling me, right? I'm here like 2 months, and they kept calling me, asking me for money and talking to me about all this foundation stuff. And I have finally had to say, I'm not quite sure who you think I am, right? But I'm just a guy here with 4 kids and a wife and just moved here. And I don't by any means have enough money to sponsor a building or anything like that. And they finally figured it out and got to the right Lee Williams, whose name is now on one of our buildings over here. So
can't say that I've ever been mistaken for someone else. There's not a lot of Knausts around here.
Well, just don't ask me for chemistry help, because I am not that Dr. Lewis.
We should probably just get started, Jackie, and I think more folks might join.
All right, we will call the meeting to order, and I do the roll call. And was Rachel going to do that, or were you going to do that, Kelly?
Rachel can do it.
Yeah, I can do it. Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Jackie Knaust.
Present.
Jim, how do you say your last name, Jim? I apologize.
Flu.
Okay. And Cass is not present. No. That's why I'm doing roll call. Cindy Stonick. No. Katrina Pascuso.
Present.
Thank you. Ross Brumagian.
Present.
I thought I saw Ross. Kathleen Moraus. Joyce Overly.
Present.
Thank you. Lee Williams.
Present.
Pete Coughlin. No. Heath Calhoun. Matt Hill.
Present.
Robin Weaver. Peter Kushinikoff. Dawn Bellotti. Ryan Kempert. Shane White. Jacob Mashinsky. Aaron Lewis.
Present.
Adam Glass Schwint.
Here.
Kevin Haft. Sam Sharon. Colton Rocco. Brenda Fredette. Here. Susan Fensky. Fawn Petrosky.
Present.
Thank you. Aaron Lake. Jim Geiger. And Kelly Rapinski.
Here, thank you.
Rachel, Kathleen, and Peter. I thought I saw Peter on. And now maybe he disappeared.
I'll watch.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.
So hopefully everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the 31st. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion. Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there
Second, Joyce.
Joyce? Is there any discussion on the minutes? All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes from January 31st? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, the minutes have passed. Up next, we have the Assembly Chair report. The only thing that I wanted to share with you was, I can't remember if I had asked in one of these meetings, or maybe it was one of our executive committee meetings. But I had asked Kelly about the models that were on the webpage. There were a couple committees on there that might be new committees to some of the campuses. And so Kelly had followed up, and those are going to be looked at in the Middle States self-study and maybe updated as we move through that. So Susan Fensky will be working, her team will be working on potential updates to those. And next up, we have the student report. Did we have, I know Cass couldn't join us today. She had an emergency. And I'm looking, I don't know that we have any other students on to give a report. So we will move on to the COO EVP report. I know I saw Lori.
Sorry, right here. Sorry. My video isn't the stablest today, so that's why I'm flipping back and forth, but I am absolutely here.
Oh, were you okay to give the
Yeah.
update?
Yeah. Would you like me to dive in on that right now?
Sure. Did you, and I think if there was anything you wanted to share screen, I think you
Yep.
should be able to do
Yep.
that as well.
I'm gonna do that. Yeah, in fact, Fawn and I are gonna tag team this as we do most things related to the budget. So let's, we can dive right in there, and let me share my screen. What I want to do, of course, sorry, I'm on different technology today. Fawn, I am going to email you what I would like you to share, okay? And I can just start talking about this.
Sounds good.
You know, it never works the minute that you need it to, does it? So that is okay. We always have a backup plan. What I'm sending here to Fawn, and she'll share it here in a second, is a sort of like a little one pager that we did around the CPP. And so the CPP is done now. It's you know, it was turned in on Friday. We did share it with the APSCUF presidents on Friday as per our agreement with APSCUF. So we need to do that. And now we are in the process of, we're going to go through that and kind of socialize that around the rest of campus. Certainly we'll do it here. Jackie, you and I talked about, I know Senate, we've got that coming up, and it's, you know, this is the document that goes to the COT, to the Board of Governors. So certainly we want you to see it. We want to be really transparent about it. And Fawn, when you get it, if you just let me know and share it. What I'm going to do is start talking about it. What we came up with here, the CPP is really big. Have any of you actually looked at it before? Have you unpacked? Yeah, it's a big, Joyce, I know you have, you are on the, it is a really, it's a complex document to try to weave your way through. There are many, many, many Excel sheets, and there's formulas all over the place and lots of tiny little rows, et cetera. And so what I did is just pulled up some key information and built some tables of enrollment, and Fawn's team built some budget tables. And we did this, you can have the whole thing. This is not in any way trying to gloss over anything. It's just because it's really hard and complicated to read. So we said, let's get the giant takeaway pieces, put them on a one pager. I'm a big fan of the one pager. Sometimes the one pager has two sides, which this one does because there's lots of charts. This is just really an attempt to give you a high level view of our budget situation. And obviously you can dig into the full CPP anytime you want and see everything that's in there. It's a little bit, the CPP is just a little bit tricky to read. And so I would say this, if you find yourself having questions and you think, boy, this doesn't make sense, or what's going on here, or whatever, reach out to Fawn, reach out to me, reach out through your shared governance leaders. And we can always come and do a deeper dive. And Fawn and I, quite frankly, in our budget, remember how we did budget 101 in the fall? This is one of the modules coming up anyway, and we'll do a deeper dive. But as you're looking at it, if you have questions, we'll help explain. I will say one of the things that is trickiest about reading this is the comparison of budgets to actuals. And so we're going to get into that in one of the budget 101 modules. So if you look here at why we do one, can everybody read that? Is it big enough? Okay. And we'll send this, Jackie, we'll send this out to all the leaders. You know, there's nothing secret about it. It's just like a little summary that we wrote. The reason why, like, why do we do this? Why do we spend all this time and then you do an update? It's because it's really mapping out your projected revenue against projected expenditures. It's how you keep track of your budget. So think about it almost the way you would back in the day when we had checkbooks and you kept your checkbook register, right? And you had your numbers there. Think of it kind of like that. And I know most of us don't have those anymore, but you know, you go online and look at your balances, et cetera. I mean, obviously it's not quite that real time because a lot of this is based on enrollment. And so these are projections. But we do take a moment and update and look around and see where we are against what we thought, where we thought we'd be. So we'll get into that in a second. You remember the primary sources of the E&G revenue were tuition and fees and the state allocation, right? So obviously that drives a lot of this. And most of our expenditures, as you recall from Budget 101, Module 1, are on the E&G side. So the CPP, what it does is it allows us to look at actuals in a prior year, track progress in our current year, and project several years out based on some key things: enrollment, personnel, operating cost assumptions, right? So that's the value of it. And it is actually a valuable tool. So let's see where we are. As you know, we definitely took an enrollment hit in fall 22. We are looking at another one for fall 2023. There's just no way around it. We have taken a lot of steps to address some of the challenges that led to the dip in 22 and that are leading to the dip in 23. Just so you know the way enrollment works. Right now, actually, we are building, excuse me, the fall 2024 class. All right. So by this time in the cycle, really by the time you get to October, November, your fall upcoming class, that cycle's pretty much wrapped up in that time frame. By December, most of the students have kind of figured out their top couple options, and then it's all about trying to just convert applicants that you've admitted into yields. So fall 23, I know it seems like it's far away, but there's really not very much runway left there to address that class. So we'll keep you updated. We're going to have enrollment updates frequently as we move through the rest of the spring and the summer, of course. But just so you know, we do have a number that we're looking at, which I'll share in a second. The way enrollment works, when you take a dip, you pay for that for a couple of years, right? Because your first years become sophomores, and the smaller your first year class is, the smaller that chunk in the out years. And so you're going to see, even though we are predicting that by fall 2024, because that's the class we're working on right now, that we're going to start going back up again in the first year class after taking some pretty serious hits, you'll see we don't even climb out of the overall dip till fall 25. And I believe by fall 26, we'll be moving to what I would call the floor. You remember the floor is the thing we've been trying to figure out. What is it? What does it look like? So you'll see, we think we have our heads around that. In the meantime, what does this mean? Well, of course, we have to streamline our operations. There's just no way around that. We lost 10% last year. We're looking at a 16 to 17% loss this year. Those are just, they're unrecoverable losses in terms of you can't just snap your fingers and make it all up in the next year. It just doesn't work. It doesn't happen that way. We've mapped out our best guess at a floor. Yeah, fun, thanks. Yeah, you can scroll, that's perfect. Yep, just like that. And then we'll go to the two charts. So, we're looking at what is the floor. We made an aggressive model. We made a conservative model. And you'll see that by the time we get down to fall 26, 27, it's about 1,000 FTE swing. And that's because, as you see, if you look at that very first column, the second column, new first year undergrad headcounts, you'll see that in the top one there, the 2,035, the 1,450, the 1,550, that's a more aggressive model. We actually do think that's attainable. This is not aspirational, but it is aggressive. That is assuming we're going to fix everything, and we're well on our way to doing that. The blue one, the conservative model, that you'll see that's gaining only 75 students a year. I do think that's very conservative. I don't think that's where we're going to land, but we want to model it anyway, because we need to see what the impact would be. And so you'll see as that kind of goes out, the impact isn't as dramatic in the first year, because guess what? Fall 23 is pretty much baked. But in the out years, then it really starts to make a difference. So you can see why the aggressive model is what we really want to strive for, because you really do start, gaining some steam back, kind of getting back to a much more, I think, in a reasonable floor for Penn West, right? So obviously we have to do some phased reductions. We were always going to have to do that. This helps us understand, like, what does that look like, and what is the student body size that we think we're going to have in order to support. Obviously, as we work through this, we have to do all we can to ensure workload for our permanent faculty. We have to be strategic about the program array, gen ed service courses. We're going to be working with all of the faculty and deans and chairs on that. And then, of course, we have to get our enrollment practices at peak performance. You may have heard or seen emails during probably, I guess, January, early February. We've brought Sarah Freed in as an interim VP for enrollment management. She's got a tremendous amount of experience, and her goal is to help us make sure that all of our enrollment and retention practices, admissions, financial aid, other retention practices, and of course for retention, working hand in hand with academic affairs, that these things are really at peak performance, right? Because we want to not only get students here, we want to keep them here. So that's really the goal. So you can see those two aggressive and conservative models. We're going to flip to the next page in a moment, but let me just, before we flip, let's make sure, are there any questions before we flip down to the budget? So basically the very next page just maps out the budget for this, right? That's how the budget works. You figure out your enrollment, the appropriate is a fixed number we already know. From there, we can build the budget. Any questions on these ones? And Jackie, I'll rely on you because I can't see all the faces since we're sharing the screen.
I don't see any hands up.
Okay. So of course, the next step here is to take this and turn it into, and I know this is little so fun, you might have to pull that little button down there, and blow it up a little bit, and we have to kind of scroll across. So if you look at the far left, you'll just see it's revenue, tuition fee, state appropriate, auxiliary, yada, yada, and then expenditures. And the important takeaway is that number in the gray bar at the bottom, which is your revenue against your expenditures, okay? You've heard Fawn talk a lot already about how we're negative 41 million in this current year that we're in. That is offset by those one-time dollars you see there, which put us at negative 13. But without those one-time dollars, we would have been at negative 41. So you've heard us kind of talking all about that number there for a while. Now, we did do an update, and this just shows you, and I know this was hard, and I know for faculty and chairs and deans, I know it was, not fun to do this, but you remember that we did some streamlining in the spring to make sure that we were being as efficient as we could be. Fawn on her side did some other cost avoidance strategies, some other personnel stuff, not just on the faculty side. And you'll see instead of negative 13, the update now that we're projecting is negative 6. Negative 7.6. So that's real money. Yes, it's still negative. Yes, of course. But it's an improvement of nearly $6 million, right? So that's big. That's the kind of work that we need to do, trying to figure out what can we reasonably do to start chipping away at this structural deficit. So that's a great example of that. If you look now at the next two columns, sets of columns, that conservative and aggressive, that literally maps right onto the numbers on the previous page, right? It takes that enrollment and turns it into revenue. Okay. So you'll see, as you would expect, the expenditures stay flat, but the revenue columns are different because that's the enrollment factor. Does that make sense, everybody? So you'll see on the conservative, definitely, I already said things are going to get worse before they get better. And in both models, you'll see that happening, getting down into the negative 50-ish range in the conservative, then coming back out to negative 43. On the aggressive, though, you'll see an improvement of quite a bit over the 3 years, coming at negative 35. Now, remember, in Budget 101, Fawn and I talked about the importance of advocacy around this structural deficit, right? This structural deficit, we're not going to be able to get out of this without assistance. What the advocacy side is around, can we get some debt relief assistance? Our overall debt payments every year are 28 million, and about 26 million of that is for buildings. And we're trying to see, can we do some restructuring? Can we find some other avenues there to take that off the books in a way that would not be starting the year when it's a structural deficit, right? You start the year at like negative 28. That's a very tough place to start. So if you imagine, just pretend in your mind, take the 28, or let's just say, let's take 26 off of that 35. If we took 26 off of that 35, well, now it's negative 9. And that's still a big number, right? But it's certainly a number we can get our heads around a little bit more and say, okay, what if we got some of that, what if we just got maybe some potential economic development base funding, a couple million for each school? Do you see what I mean? Like, you can start to see, hey, there might be a path out of this. And so that's really the other side of what we're working on. But of course, to get there, you have to understand what is a floor that we can get to and stay at. How do we align our operations to that floor? And then we can start really making a plan about, all right, how do we come out of this? So let me pause there. Fawn, did I miss anything that you want to add in there? Or did I get any of the numbers wrong?
No, I think you're pretty much spot on. Yep.
Okay. So any questions, thoughts? Does this make sense as just sort of laying? I mean, our goal here was just to try to take a complicated document and just say, this is the bottom line. And really, as we said, the very first part of Budget 101, remember, is we want to try and share all of this with you because you have to have the context of why certain decisions have to be made. Nobody wants to streamline. Now, of course, it's nobody wants to do that. We have to do it. Here's why we have to do it. And we want to do our best as a team to get there. So that's the context for this, not to depress you, just to say this is the real numbers that we're working with. Okay, Fawn, I think you can stop share if we want to just take a moment and see if there's any other. And it's okay. There are no dumb questions. There's no questions that aren't allowed, whatever anybody wants to know about.
Lori Lee has his hand up.
Yeah. Okay. Lee, there's Lee.
Hi, all. Yeah, I guess for me, it's not so much any in the details of what you just suggested, but thank you for sharing with us, right? Where we're at in the real of it all. Who's leading the advocacy campaign and how are we putting this together? And I get right. It seems finally, maybe, I guess, we can all work together for a change, right?
Yep.
Develop a unified voice. And so it seems we often let these spin out. So AppScuff goes one way, ASME another, Scupa another, students another, management another, right? Leadership another. And I appreciate everybody's got their role, right? Forward scene, back scene, forward stage, backstage sorts of stuff. Okay, all right. Who, how, what, when, where, and I know you've got enough to do, Lori. So I'm not asking you directly to say, please shepherd this.
I'm doing that too, Lee. Don't you know?
But
No, it's a great. No, it's a really great question, and it's it's so important. I will say, what I've really been impressed by, and I mean this, and I think is Joyce. You're the only AppScuff president on today, right? But Joyce will please carry this back to your colleagues, Joyce. I will say one of the things that I have just been, profoundly impressed by since really the first week I got here, well, maybe the second week. In the first week, I think the APSCA presidents were reasonably skeptical, but then I think we had some good conversations. You know, the APSCA presidents, Lee, have made it very clear that at least in terms of faculty, and I know this carries out to the other unions, absolutely. I just happen to meet the most with that group in terms of the presidents, that they stand ready to work together on this advocacy piece, and that is huge. Kelly has been working hard behind the scenes on a plan that brings all this together, so she is in communication very, very regularly with the chancellor's office. Dale, your president is taking on an advocacy role, and that will be super helpful. So we're working both behind the scenes and kind of out there. And as we develop a plan, I will say, Lee, what's really important to understand, and so I am a political scientist by training and a mixed methodologist, but let me give you the political science piece of this. And we're all anxious to get moving on this, but you have to know the kind of waves of politics. And right now the budget hearings are going to dominate during March. And so we want to kind of keep our powder dry. We're going to get a good plan together. Once we get through, remember, there's a new governor, there's a new cabinet members, there's a lot of, they're drinking from a fire hose right now, which you all understand because you've been doing that for a while. So we need to give them time to get through those hearings and then kind of assess, all right, this is a good moment for us to start, working together. So there will be plenty of opportunities to work together for sure. And I will say, this is why even right now, there's going to be, we shared this with the three presidents, and I'm sorry, meet and discuss. It was the whole group on Friday. We're going to be looking at some streamlining in academic affairs, reducing the number of colleges, streamlining in terms of departments. The more of that we can get done and under our belts as we move into like the April, May-ish timeframe, the better off we're going to be, because we will be taken a lot more seriously if we can demonstrate, hey, we get it. Yes, we see the negative 41, blah, blah, like we get it. We're on it. We're doing our best. So it's the timing it's kind of nice. It gives us a little bit of time here to make some serious plans during the month of March and get our ducks in a row and our advocacy plan ship shape. Kelly, did I miss anything on that you want to add?
I don't think so. One thing that we've been sharing is that advocacy is really going to be a collaborative effort with everyone. I'll say this more times than I can, care to. If you try to go into someone's office for the first time and ask for money, don't even bother. It's all about relationship building. So we need everyone at Penn West to tell their story. How has it impacted you as a faculty member, as a staff member, as a student, as a trustee, as a leader? And then what we do then is we throw in those fun facts, the $750 million impact we have on the region, the number of employees we have. And then when we look at that, our ask will be a percentage. And then you essentially say, we're asking you to invest X amount in us, and then you get your $750 million return. So that'll be the positioning on that. Good timing to mention this today, Lori. I've got that on my list of things to do today, and we'll be rolling out that advocacy plan in the coming weeks.
And in all seriousness, as we met with the various shared governance leaders, look, where people, you're all in communities, you have to Kelly's point, relationships, between everybody we have, there are definitely some people with some good relationships in terms of, the governor's office and the legislature. And, so it's not just management, right? It's all of us trying to build on those relationships and to say, how do we develop a plan here? The other piece I will say, do I have one more minute, Kelly? Or no? Yeah, Jackie, whoever's, I'm not sure who I'm answering to today, Kelly or Jackie, one of you. The other piece of this, certainly we look at this enrollment and the budget, that's the high level, right? The other piece of this, of course, is, okay, what is the path? Like, how do we do all the things we need to do, right? So I was already working on kind of a blueprint that I have been working on for your president. So that was already kind of underway, and I've been, kind of mapping out the various pieces and sort of like a timeline and how do we get there, et cetera. And so the nice part is, as we transition here, that we kind of I already have that sort of a draft of that that I had worked with Dale on. And so it really, I think it makes sense for Penn West. And she was very much saying, yep, that's the direction to go. So we'll have that. What I'm going to do is next week, I'm going to work with the vice presidents, because a lot of it, of course, divisions we need different things from different divisions. So I'm going to work with the vice presidents on making sure that that all makes sense to them. And then we're going to, of course, get that back out to the various shared governance groups and make sure that it makes sense for everybody else. And we can work on that together to say, okay, like this is our blueprint, right? So we know the big numbers up here. Yes, we have to do advocacy, but here's the blueprint for how we get to where we need to get to as an institution. Does that make sense? So there's like various steps and swim lanes and timelines, and as we work together, we can pin all that down. Now there's more hands.
There are. Kat?
Hi, thank you for the explanation. Super helpful. You had mentioned about the colleges condensing and the departments condensing, and there's been some 6 to 3, 30 to 20. Do you have some concrete or semi-concrete numbers you could share?
Actually, to be honest with you, not that much. We're looking at all the data. I'm guessing when I say 3, it's in my head because we have 3 campuses, right? Maybe it's 4. Maybe we need a university college. But so we're going to look at all the data around that. When I've done some of these things before, there are. I will say this: I make data informed decisions, not data driven decisions. I think data. Well, I shouldn't say what I think because it might offend somebody. I will just say I make data informed decisions, right? But I do like to have data involved. So for example, it's not just counting up the faculty in a department and saying, okay, that's how we look at complexity. No, how many majors do you have? How many minors do you have? How many permanent faculty? How many temps? What's the head count? Because they're all human beings, even if they're not FTE, and interaction with a person doesn't just boil down to an FTE, right? So 4 students, 5 undergrads, one that takes 3 credits, one that takes 15 credits. Do you necessarily spend 5 times as much time with the one who takes the 5 credits? No, I don't think so, because that other student might be bouncing around needing a lot of help too. So we have to look at a lot of that, right? You look at budgets, you look at accreditation. So I will say right now, what I know is we need fewer of both, right? In the next couple of weeks, we'll pin down what does that look like. We'll get a model out there for faculty and for everybody to respond to. The other piece that's going to be, I think, really important, where we welcome some real shared governance involvement, is how do we think about campus leadership, right? I think one of the things we're learning as we go, this university is still brand new. You were brand new on July 1st. And I think the campus administrators, they're doing a lot of work. Okay, fair enough. But it feels like there's maybe a piece missing. And that piece, I think, is on the academic affairs side, the faculty side. Our students need to be able to know, and our staff, I said this on Meet and Discuss, we need the easy button, the concierge model. When who's got the bat phone to everybody? We need somebody on each campus. And I'm really envisioning the campus lead kind of more externally, and maybe like a dean as more of like the internal. They have the bat phone to everybody and can get problem solved on a campus. Because even though we are Penn West and we're across all 3, how does a student, unless they're pure online, how does a student experience Penn West? They experience it on a campus, right? Is the Edinburgh student really going to regularly go down to Cal? I don't think so. So we have to think about that a little bit and have a better mechanism. So I know that's a long answer, and it's honest. I don't know yet, but we're looking at it, and it needs to be smaller.
Sometimes I don't know is the best answer that you can give. The only thing I didn't catch is the timeline. I know, is it faculty chairs need to be elected by April 15th?
Yes, the timeline is super fast. So I will say, in fact, it's funny. We were at a Meet and Discuss, and I was like, okay, well, we can get through this, maybe by the end of March. And Mario pointed out, no, we got to run all those elections and things. So, so hopefully in the next few weeks, we're going to have a model that you all can respond to. And just look, because of the situation we find ourselves in, we management, we're going to propose the model and take feedback on it. if we had enough time, we're out of time. My preferred way to do this would have been to say, let's take a year and everybody, let's start from scratch. We literally don't have time. If we don't make the April deadline, I don't know what then. So we got to just try, right? So it'll be
Yeah.
pretty quick.
Understandable. Thank you. I appreciate
Sure.
that.
Jim,
Thank you. So Lori, as I'm looking at the budget numbers, obviously one of the concerns and the numbers that stand out is the looking at the salary and wages going down by almost 7 million. Has there been any analysis at this point in terms of employee reduction of retirements and how big of a factor that can play in that reduction?
Sure.
But certainly I see as this starts getting out, there's going to be panic about furloughs are happening next week.
Ah, okay.
Can we help explain this and avoid panic or more? I mean, we've already lost a lot of excellent faculty and staff.
Yep. Yeah, no problem. So let me lead with this. I will not be issuing any retrenchment letter on April 1st. So that can be shared. I said that it need discuss Friday. It will not be happening.
And that's faculty. So for the staff side, our process is very different in terms of furloughs rather than return.
Right, right. We don't have right now, I will tell you, we are not looking at furloughs. We don't have any planned furloughs, whether that's through the faculty mechanism or other union mechanisms. There aren't any planned furloughs that are specifically related to any, like when you mentioned next, I assume that you meant April 1st. That's why I thought you meant the faculty piece, since there is a specified date there that I know has been on people's minds. So having said that, no, we're not planning to do that right now. This is why this plan of a phased reduction is so important. What Fawn and I did was look through what could we reasonably achieve through the means that we have in front of us. And so you'll see in there, yes, there is a reduction, certainly, of faculty. There is, and if you look in the CPP, you can look on the workforce tab, you can see all of that right in there. I believe that there will be a mix of retirements. So let me just speak on the faculty side, since that's where the bigger numbers are, simply because there were so many staff positions cut in the prior years. I think a mix of retirements and strategically using our permanent faculty will actually result in some of that phased reduction already. So that's what we're looking at. Typically, there's been 15 to 20 retirements in non-ESLP years anyway through Penn West. So that's part of it. And obviously, you know, the use of permanent faculty is what we have to really focus on, right? And obviously that means having fewer temps. So that's kind of where we are on that side of the house. So you can look through there and see that. My hope is that as we can streamline in a phased way, we can keep moving the ball down the field here without creating more disruption than we need to. That's the ultimate goal. But we have to have certain milestones in place to do that, right? So this is why the departments, the colleges, some of this other streamlining, Fawn's team did a great job already on some of the operating budget, cost avoidance. We just have to keep moving down that road. And if we can keep hitting milestones, I think we'll be able to get where we need to get to.
Thank you.
Lori, I have one question for you too.
Sure.
In terms of the streamlining the colleges and departments.
Mhm.
One question that I've heard a lot from fellow faculty is, what are we doing when the leads end? Because as a lead, I know how busy I have been as
Yep.
just a lead.
No, understood, Jackie. Yep,
Yes.
understood.
My hope is that if we're streamlining the departments to have less chairs, that maybe that means we get to have more assistants. Because you talk about the students wanting that contact on their
Yep.
campus.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Jackie, that's absolutely what the strategy is here, right? So Brenda actually put together a very nice set of numbers already over the weekend, and we're taking a good look at that. The goal here would be to try to figure out how we can make sure that there are assistant chairs built into this, right? And to do that, that's why it's basically a reallocation, right, of resources. We're not in a place to add a lot of net new, but we can reallocate. So that's the other really big strategy here, right? Is how do we make sure we can do this in a way? And we are, your APSCUF presidents have done a very good job of advocating. I think every time we talk, right, it's about the need. And I get it. I said at M&D on Friday, I was faculty for 15 years. I'll always be faculty in my heart. I get it. And obviously we want everybody's job to be something they can do and not feel depressed every day when they wake up. Like, we got to change that, right? So yes, we're well aware, and that is absolutely part of the strategy. How do we carve out assistant chair resources here?
Well, and Lori, like Joyce and I are in the same department. We like to joke about a Franken department, right? So we were chemistry, math, and physics before we became chemistry now. And I got to say, I don't really care what we are, who we are, as long as we're getting what we need and we're able to give our students what we need. So
Yep, agreed.
you're saying the words that I want to hear.
Yeah, agreed, Jackie. And you know what else? When we really took a look at it, and again, can I just say this, and please understand, this is not me throwing rocks at anybody. Everybody did their level best, put their best thinking. There's no playbook for this, right? There's no playbook. We're developing the playbook. And so I say this without, it's not finger pointing or like sort of Monday morning quarterbacking. It isn't that. You learn as you try to unveil something and implement it, you learn about it, right? And so I will say this, even with this sort of reorg piece that we're doing, when I've done this before, I called it 1.0 because I knew it wouldn't be exactly right. We'd have to tweak it. So I'm even saying for this, we're going to do our best to get something organized here in the next few weeks because we have such a deadline. But let's be honest, we're going to go into next year and we might find, damn, we got this one piece wrong. Okay, well, then we'll change it, right? It doesn't have to be written in stone. We're doing our best. We're just going to keep trying to do our best, right? And so even in the thoughts that people had right now about, okay, let's have these different departments. What I think is a challenge people weren't processing is, wait a minute, even though we're one big department, there's only two of us on the Clarion campus. Well, what kind of a department is that? If your like physical human colleagues are, hither and yon. So how do we, even if we do this, maybe that creates like a bigger, do you know what I mean? Like a community of thought around, to your point. And maybe I wouldn't call it a Franken department. I like to call it a community of thought or something like that. But that, suddenly actually, oh, wait, there's like a bigger group here now doing the stuff that we do as this department. So I just think there might be some good opportunities there, let alone just the assistant chair resource piece.
I did not want to be a chemistry, math, and physics department, but we grew very much as a chemistry, math, and physics department. So
Sure.
I see the benefits. And
Great. I appreciate that, Jackie.
all right, I need to check my time. We're at 11:45.
Sorry, I took too much time.
Well, and I went on with the questions. Kelly, up next, we have University Affairs, ADA. Is that Amy? Is Amy? You're on mute, Kelly.
So what I wanted to do today was to kind of get, and trust me, Amy is like, I can't believe you're making me do this, but I wanted to get Amy and Andrew here just so you guys could see kind of the faces behind the Office of Equity and Title IX. So DEI currently sits under University Affairs. We are in the process of looking at staffing to make our model a little more student-centric. We'll be doing a search for a CDO, as well as making sure that we have adequate staff at the multicultural centers on each campus. And we'll be really beefing up our student programming for next year. We're going to be working on that from now throughout the summer. But what Amy and Andrew do is they lead the Office of Equity and Title IX. And so what I really wanted to do was just have them come here today introduce themselves and give you guys an overview of what areas are under that. So this is really informational. We'll try to be quick. If we run out of time, that's okay. This isn't like anyone's in trouble or anything like that. This is just to give you an idea of the areas that keep Amy and Andrew up at night. So I'll turn it over to them. I'll let Amy kick it off, and then Andrew will lead you just through some of the technical stuff.
All right, hello, thanks for having us. We, like Kelly said, we just wanted to kind of do a quick overview. And I guess that, yeah, there's us. As you didn't know, it's our fancy pictures. So what we do is we kind of develop and implement prevention and training resources and supportive services on each campus. So Andrew's at the Edinboro campus, I'm at the Clarion campus. Jim, who's on here, is at Cal's campus, as well as Shalita, Camarda Webb. And so, you know, we do have folks on every single campus, and we try to cultivate a learning and teaching and working environment that is free of discrimination on the basis, on any basis, including discrimination on the basis of sex, which is under Title IX, obviously. We ensure that the university responds fairly and equitably to all issues and grievances related to Title IX and Title VII, which are the protected classes, related state and federal laws, and all of our university policies. We do coordinate and the university's compliance with Title IX regulations and other application laws, applicable laws and policies. So the trainings that you receive are part of that process of making sure we're in compliance. So Title IX is part of the Education Amendments of 1972, and it's enforced by the Department of Education. This federal law prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in all educational programs or activities operated by recipients of federal financial assistance. So as you know, our students do receive federal financial aid, and so we are therefore obligated to be compliant with Title IX. And so Title IX applies to all participants of these programs, including the students, volunteers, faculty, staff, and even parents if they're involved and on campus. So Title IX helps to foster a safe and respectful university environment. And that's a better environment for our students, for our faculty, and our staff, right? And it protects us from incidents of sex-based discrimination, sexual harassment, including sexual violence, in relationship violence and abuse. So some of the requirements that we have is that we are obligated to provide a prompt, thorough, and equitable investigation of any report of sex-based discrimination, sexual harassment, or sexual violence. This obligation remains even in the absence of a formal complaint. So we have received third-party complaints, we can receive anonymous complaints, and we do have to do the best of our ability to address those complaints. Title IX ensures that both parties in a reported event have an equal opportunity to be heard and participate in the grievance process. So all employees at the university are responsible employees under Title IX. So all university officials, volunteers, and employees, including student employees, are obligated to report incidents of sexual misconduct of which they become aware of to the Title IX coordinator or designee, unless they serve in a role that makes such reports privileged and are recognized as a confidential resource. So the only folks on our campuses are those in the Health and Wellness Center. So the counselors, the nurses, the doctors, and the support staff in those offices. Those are the only confidential resources. And of course, Nancy Scoble at the Cal campus. They are the only confidential resources. Everybody else is considered a responsible employee. So faculty do have exemptions, and those only are limited to classroom discussion if it comes up during classroom discussion, in a writing assignment for a class, or as part of a university approved research project. So any other time that faculty become aware of any type of sexual misconduct, they are obligated and required to report it. And there is no reporting exemption for reports of sexual misconduct when it involves a minor.
So when looking at the protection of minors piece, then as we go forward.
Andrew, can I just ask you first to just introduce yourself and your title? And just
I'm Andrew Matt. I'm the Associate Director of Equity in Title IX, and I work for Amy. And I'm located here on the Edinboro campus. So protection of minors, the first piece everybody has probably already encountered, which is your clearances. Under the Board of Governors policy, we're supposed to check clearances to ensure that employees and volunteers have had the criminal background checks, and we do that every 5 years. Going beyond that, as Amy had already brought up, all employees are mandated reporters for instances that involve minors. That includes all officials, volunteers, and all employees, including student employees. And they must report all incidents of reported child abuse, including but not limited to physical and sexual abuse. And the standard we're looking at there is a reasonable suspicion. So you don't need to go into an investigation. You don't need to try to ferret things out. If you think that there is a situation where a minor is being abused, that reasonable suspicion by itself is enough for you to be in a position where you can report it. And you assist us in complying with legal requirements and reporting. One of the most important things to remember when, as a mandated reporter for protection of minors, is that the consequences can be pretty high. The statute of limitations matches the crime that might have occurred to the child, and punishment for an individual for failure to report can also match potentially up to the violation that could have happened to the child. So it's very important to make sure that you're reporting any instances that occur with minors. And in general, we're working to protect students, faculty, and staff from instances of sexual violence on campus. We're supporting survivors and individuals who are on campus who have had incidents occur to them. And we're working to maintain a safe environment by striving to eliminate, prevent, and address discrimination on the basis of sex, including sexual violence. Essentially, the way I always talk about it is that we want to be a safe campus where everybody can come here. You can work, you can learn, and achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve without these things interfering in you and your progress. The primary responsibilities that we have, we report all Title IX violations need to be reported to the university as soon as possible. Report instances you personally observe as well as instances that are reported to you. One of the things that I always bring up was there used to be this really great old training where a professor was talking and they had this pizza party and a student comes up and is like, hey, you know, these problems have been happening. There's stuff going on. And the professor says, hey, wait a second, before you start, I just want to let you know I'm a mandated reporter. Anything you say, I'm going to have to report to the Title IX office, but we do have confidential resources on campus. So I like to bring that up because, we often think, okay, somebody's, confiding in me and they want to tell me something. But if a student is telling you that, you're in a position where you're now going to have to report that as a mandated reporter. You're going to have to let us know with that limited exception of the academic exception. You need to report it to the designated office on campus and report suspected child abuse. Now, within our policy, we have the reportable offenses. Rather than defining everything for you, you can find them in the policy. But one of the things that I like to bring up is that things are far broader than we usually anticipate. We look at sexual violence and sexual assault, but that also includes things like sexual contact without consent. Sexual exploitation is very broad. That can include a non-consensual sharing of pictures, that can include various different things. We need to understand that these can be very broad things. So if somebody comes to you and reports something and says that something's going on, make sure that you get it to us. Our office, Amy and I, will work very carefully to look over the information, and we'll work with the student in the situation. So just understand that the definitions, it could be more than what you just expect or what you think is a stereotypical type of situation. And here you can see where information can be reported. We've got all the pieces on campus. You can see here that the Office of Equity and Title IX, Amy and myself, we're on there every single time. But if you ever have any questions, if you're ever confused, if you're ever not sure, should I report something or shouldn't I, contact Amy or I, and we can get you that information. We can assist you when you're looking at situations of potential suspected child abuse for protection of minors. We can help you to understand how to make those reports, how to go into the system. We're more than happy to work with you, in any of those types of situations. The last piece I'm going to hit on is harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So we've already talked about the pieces that deal with discriminatory harassment. But we also have within our policies prohibited conduct in the form of regular harassment that might be occurring between employees, acts of bullying that might be occurring, or acts of intimidation, which deal with physical threats that somebody might be receiving from an individual. Much like everything else, any instances of those should be reported to our office. And again, Amy and I can answer any questions if you're unsure about what's going on or unsure about how your situation might fit within the policy.
So Title IX and the education amendments also cover pregnant and parenting students. And so we want to make sure that our pregnant and parenting students are having an equal opportunity to participate in their educational programs, athletic events, activities. So if you're a faculty member and you receive a notice from a student, that they are pregnant or have recently delivered, please work with them. We are obligated to work with them to create adjustments to their classes, so extended time, missed classes for appointments and things like that. Ron Radeker is the Deputy IX Title Coordinator for pregnant and parenting students, and so oftentimes those memos will be coming from him. And if you do have any questions about the pregnant and parenting students, just reach out to Andrew, myself, or Ron, and we're happy to walk through that with you. And as far as ADA, so there are students that do require accommodations due to medical issues. So each campus does have an office that does deal with the students. John Masala is on Cal's campus, Ron Radeker is on Clarion's campus, and Sharon Conklin is on Edinburgh's campus. I do all of the ADA requests for employees that need accommodations for them for at work. So if you do have employees or have any questions about that, you can reach out to me at any time and happy to walk you through that.
I think we are good for questions, assembly members, if there are any. You're lucky I didn't call you assemblers. I called myself a assembler at Legislative Assembly because I was tongue-tied, so we are assembly members. Any questions for Amy or Adam?
Andrew.
Andrew, I apologize.
It's okay.
Anyways, I'm sorry, Andrew. We will then move on to, do we have anything, Kelly, for new initiatives?
We don't. I will say that next month we'll have some updates from Lori with the blueprint for Penn West that we'll be rolling out. That's her plan for the operations and budgets, as she discussed. We'll have some advocacy updates. So we'll have some more information to share next month.
So maybe we're at 11:59. We have real or rumor up next, but I know we did have a couple questions come up in Faculty Senate from faculty that I think, Peter, were you gonna? And then
I
also, if
can
anybody
address
else had questions.
I like to address one of them is with Starfish. For the 10-week Starfish update, there was some concern that by the time that that information was released, if a student was failing a course or not doing well, it actually came out after the withdraw date from the course. So I was wondering if there was some way we could address that. I think that'd be the primary question.
Peter, do you mind shooting Brenda and me an email on that? Just because we've got it, we transitioned there, some of the folks in the strategic enrollment management. I don't want that to fall through the cracks, but if you will email Brenda and I, we will absolutely make sure we're on top of that and finding out the situation.
Okay.
And you're talking about midterm grades, correct?
Well, there's the 10-week Starfish updates.
Yeah.
That would be passed.
Right.
The midterm.
Right.
And there was a question that came up that, do faculty get a report of the midterm grades that are turned in if a student is failing, or do they have access even to the reports that they turn in? I think there was a faculty member that might have made a mistake, but then couldn't go back and see or update their report.
I would say any of that stuff, Jackie, so the thing from Peter, that if you guys just shoot us those, maybe even in one email with some bullets, what we'll do is get Sarah involved in that. She, I know, is dealing with probably most of that, although some of it might now involve Dan and Shane. So just shoot those to us and we'll make sure in our kind of transitioning here that we get the right people connected to work with faculty on those items for sure.
Right. And Peter, I am aware that Starfish does a 5-week and a 10-week progress report. And then layered in the middle of that is the midterm grade, which goes through Banner.
Yeah, but the great concern was by the time students potentially find out at that 10-week, it's too
Absolutely.
more.
Because Dan had been on just briefly with us in the meeting, and then I think he had to hop off to go to the meeting with you, Brenda, and the chapter presidents. But our withdrawal date is different than what we had in the past. And he spoke just briefly about why that was, but quite earlier than what we were used to at Clarion, but I think more similar to what had happened maybe at California. I'm not sure about Edinburgh, so.
Okay. Yes, as Lori said, if you can drop that in an email, we will look into that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to share really quickly, we have a new page on penwest.edu for DEI if you need to refer students. Tons of resources there, also links to the Title IX. So we're just making some small changes there just to make information more accessible. So thank you.
Jackie, can I go back one thing, just for a second here? I'm just processing on this. And can I just throw this out as an idea? And please feel free to disagree if this is a bad idea. One of the things that I'm just thinking through here as we sort of, transition and we're going to be dealing with a lot of things, et cetera. I would suggest if you've got a thing like that, like Peter, your question, or Jackie, if there's things like that, could you, especially, those of you in leading on these different groups, et cetera, if you wouldn't mind, when those come up, instead of waiting for a meeting like this, when it comes up, could you possibly just jot it as an email and maybe send it to Kelly and Brenda and me? So between the chief of staff and Brenda as the provost and me, one of us probably knows where that, unless you know you know what I'm saying? If it's a thing where we're like, well, who's doing it? Maybe just send it. And maybe Kelly, can you think of like a standard subject line that we could ask the various leaders of the various groups and members like this to use, so we know this is it's an item we want to pay attention to. We're not saying the house is on fire, but let's get an answer. I think it would help us get things done a little bit faster if we weren't waiting, right, for some of these types of meetings. And it helps it not get lost in the shuffle. Like if we just say, all right, we're going to centralize it. Kelly's really the great point of contact around centralizing. So if there's a way, maybe it's just an idea. Anybody have a thought about that? Or
Yeah, no, I like that idea. I think folks maybe sometimes were feeling things were getting lost in email because there are so many emails going
right,
around.
and you don't know who to send it to. Yeah,
right.
Well, the good news is for you guys, I am married to my job. It is a lifestyle, not a job. So I am good at getting back at emails. I usually get back to everybody within 24 hours, or I at least will tell you that I cannot get back to you within 24 hours. So please use me as a conduit of information. At the very least, I can always get you to the right person. And it's really strange for some reason when you get an email from the chief of staff, they just tend to respond a little bit quicker. So I can help you guys get answers when you need them.
So I'm hearing that the solution is when you're not sure to ask who you think and CC Kelly, and then it gets done.
Well, and I will tell you that sometimes if you do email me something, one thing I may not do is respond with who it is. Sometimes I do just forward it to that person to respond to you, but they usually get back to you pretty quickly.
We can also explore putting a Dropbox or a question box on the webpage if you feel like folks would rather submit questions that way or additionally that way. We had that during the integration on the pages. And if there's any interest, we could put that back up as well.
Yeah. Now, please do not CC me on everything. I beg you. already get that a lot.
Other questions?
I'm sorry, I had a couple issues I had to wrestle with. Did anybody talk about the academic calendar being shared?
No, Jim, I was leaving that for you.
So great thanks to the registrar's office and the web team. There'll be an announcement going out this afternoon about the academic calendar and where it's accessible. So I think Jackie and some others that have asked about that, and the Student Senate on the Clarion campus asked. So that is live now. So that communication will go out.
Any last questions? Hearing none, seeing no hands, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Jim. Thanks, Kathy. We will see you in a month.
Okay.
Bye.